It's Emily Miller. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's Sunday evening here, and we just got news that Judge Laurence Silberman has passed away. Judge Silberman was on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, which is basically the second highest court in the country. And he's mostly well known, at least for those of us who follow the Second Amendment, for a case called Parker, which you will better know as Heller. Judge Silberman, back in the days when Parker was the plaintiff, ruled in this case that the DC's complete ban on guns, and just to remind you, DC had a ban on ownership, and this is not carrying, just on ownership of guns. And there were several plaintiffs, including Dick Heller and Parker, and Silberman in the appeals court level said, this is unconstitutional. Silberman said that the individual has a right to keep and bear arms. We always hear that as the Heller decision. We think of course, Justice Anton Scalia, who wrote that, but that phrase came from Silberman. What's really important about the concept of the individual right to keep and bear arms is those who support gun control laws previously, before Heller, would say that the Constitution, the Second Amendment, was about the militia. It wasn't about the individual. So when Silberman wrote this decision, that's where he split off. The militia was a completely separate issue than the individual right to keep and bear arms. I pulled up his case, the Parker decision, and one of the, lines he wrote I think is great. This is what he wrote. At first blush, it seems passing strange that the able lawyers and statesmen in the first Congress would have expressed a sole concern for state militias with the language of the Second Amendment. Surely there was a more direct locution, such as Congress shall make no law disarming the state militias, or states have a right to a well-regulated militia. He also wrote that the framers vested everything in the people in all the other parts of the Bill of Rights, the First, the Fourth, the Ninth, and the Second. And so he wrote that nobody contends those other provisions don't protect the individual, that they're only for the militia. Indeed, the Bill of Rights, he wrote, was almost entirely a declaration of individual rights. So where do we go from here? His seat will likely be filled, obviously, by a Biden appointee who will not be as strongly Second Amendment. Most importantly, we've gotten through the Supreme Court, the Bruin decision in June. And this is why the appeals courts you're seeing across the country are changing gun control laws. And Silberman was way ahead of his time on this. And so we're seeing, after Bruin said, not only is Heller the individual right to keep and bear arms, law that exists, no gun control law that can be written that wasn't have the text of the Second Amendment in it and shows a law analogous to it at the founding of the country, meaning a law that was similar. So although President Biden is going to continue to say, I want an assault weapon ban, I want a universal background check, blah, 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 and trying to get judged, and there will be judges on the appeals courts who will do this, they're going to have a lot of trouble trying to overturn that Bruin decision that was in June. And Bruin was based on Heller. I mean, it said it throughout the case that it was based in Heller, that it continued to uphold Heller, and that it was Justice Clarence Thomas wrote this ruling in June, and that the individual right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And all that's being said, just one more thing that I think is interesting about DC gun laws is, so DC, again, back to the beginning here, DC banned all ownership of guns. You couldn't live in this city and actually own a gun. So obviously the city got sued, and if it wasn't for Silberman, who overturned it and said, no, this ban is wrong, individuals have the right to keep and bear arms, the city made a fatal mistake. What they did is they appealed, and they appealed to the Supreme Court. That enabled it, when my friend Dick Heller took over as a plaintiff, that enabled the Supreme Court to then change the law in the entire country. So ever since then, a lot of the states were really mad at DC for appealing, something they didn't know they could win. So ever since then, when they've gotten different cases that the city has lost, they have not appealed. And even most recently, if you look at my Substack, emilypostnews.com, I wrote about this carry ban. There's 10 round limits for those who are carrying outside the home. The city did not appeal the decision. The city let it go, and the city has stopped fighting as much because they don't want to lose and do again what they did in Heller, which was change the laws in the entire country. After it happened, actually one case later in the McDonald case, which was 1 year later, was the rest of the country. But it opened up this whole different change when it comes to gun control laws that no matter what, the individual, you, me, each of us who is not restricted person, has the right to keep and bear arms for self-defense. So rest his soul, and prayers for his family tonight, and I will see you back on my YouTube channel.